Hey, if you've ever looked for more cash flow, but you just didn't know where to start and wanted to find a better way than just going out there and trying a bunch of things, today's conversation is going to be a special moment for you because we have a guest that has already walked in those shoes for you and he's going to share his story. Ladies and gentlemen, on Be Free and Clear today, I have with us Todd Woods. He is a prior multi-unit franchise area developer with one time over 120 employees. He's actually written a book with the famous J. Conrad Levinson, author of Guerrilla Marketing for Franchisee Owners. And he's now got his own book out there, The Shift, where he's helping owners, franchisee owners build more profit. I'm gonna actually, Todd, I'm gonna use your saying. It says how to get unstuck in your franchise, get the profit and freedom that you signed up for. So without further ado,
Perfect.
Todd Woods, thank you for being here with us today and getting ready to share your journey and your experience with us.
John, hey, first of all, thanks for having me, and to the audience, I'm grateful to be here. It's always fun to speak with you, John, and we've become good friends, and I'm happy I'm just here to share any knowledge that I have, anything that might be useful to your listeners and viewers. So, where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think we ought to share a little bit about the beginnings, like what,
Okay.
when we started to when you started to look at opportunities, like your first steps, like what was it
Okay.
that led you to the industry of franchises? So like
Yes.
how did you get headed in that direction?
Well, great question. So, I've always been a hard worker ever since I was a kid. I started with the paper route, and was a dishwasher at a Chuck E. Cheese for years, and I like money. I like what money could bring. It wasn't my back then. It was my focus. So I didn't do as well in school, which was not that great. But I went to college, got my degree, and ended up going into financial advising. And the reason is because I had some friends that did that, and they loved it. They were making great money, but they were like 4 or 5 years down the road. But they convinced me to come over, and I did that. And I went through my family and friends, which is the way you always start in that business, and then you try and get referrals. Uh, Came out of it really strong, and by 2.5, 3 years into it, I didn't love it. I didn't actually love it. My heart was in, I want to build something that's my own. Get away from the 9 to 5. In that case, I mean, you got to work, a lot more hours. And I know that in today's jobs, they're so demanding, and there's so much expected. So my father-in-law at the time was an attorney by trade. He was a partner in a law firm, and uh, but he made the majority of his money, more money, in owning businesses on the side, like storage
Mm,
units, owned some small movie theaters, and got into real estate development and things like that. And so over the years, I was chatting with him, and I said, I really would like to own my own business. And his name was Dave Gillette, he recommended that we find a franchise. He said, why don't you find a franchise? And at the time, I didn't really understand the difference between a franchise and a regular business. But he said there's generally more proven success when you're in a franchise because you've got a proven model, you've got a brand that's already out there. And he said, I'll put up the money, you put in the sweat. And so I moved my family 850 miles away to Phoenix, Arizona to open up five. Uh, at the time, no one knew what it was, but it was Jamba Juice smoothie locations. And some people,
wow.
depending on what area in the United States or internationally, may not know the brand, but it was brand new. This was in 1997. I was 29 years old. It was like 350 grand to open up a single location at that time, and we committed to five. So I was really excited because we didn't know we didn't know anybody in Phoenix, but I had this vision, this dream of financial freedom and time freedom and being my own boss. But what I found was that it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. I didn't know much about business owning, but the franchise, taught me what I needed to know. And then I had to really invest in myself, John, because I knew enough to be dangerous, so to speak, in owning business. So the first couple of years were really hard, but I sought out mentors and direction, got help from the franchisor, and I actually decided that I wanted to be like the top franchise performer because that's just in me. I want to be the best at what I'm doing. So I interviewed the best of the best franchisees that were out there that were doing the numbers. I interviewed them, I studied them, and I learned some key things that I was not doing. I was working the 60, 70 hours a week at first, which sometimes you got to do in a business to get it going, but I couldn't get out of that rat race. I felt stuck. That's why this book that I'm coming out with in July is a lot about that. But we finally turned the corner, and I made the shift, and the shift's acronym, but basically learned what the 5 primary drivers were to owning and operating a successful business, and it basically starts with leadership identity, what kind of leader you're going to be, either reactive or intentional. And so I built my leadership skills, invested in myself, and marketing is a driver. Need to know how to market, need to know how to provide the customer experience, the operations, and then execution and follow up. The challenge with a lot of business owners, and this happens with 9-to-5 jobs or just corporate jobs, any job that you're in, we kind of plateau. Wouldn't you agree, John? Does that ever happen to you, or right?
Yeah, well,
it's kind of plateau and get stuck.
Yeah, it's interesting, Todd, because I think you plateau in multiple aspects of it too, right? Because there's number one, there's time, which
Yeah.
is time is infinite, but in our perceived relative world that we walk through every single day, I mean, there is a finite amount of time for us as an individual, so we lose that leverage. And then there's the mental, the attitude aspect of what we get in
Mhm.
our own way, right? So with
Right. Right.
not looking at operating systems or trusting in the right people. So I totally see that
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah. So able to break through that and just built this rhythm and cadence and just continued to focus on the right things. I ended up after 9 years selling that package of 5 locations for several $1 million. I can't disclose the amount just because that was part of the deal, but it was just enough money to be dangerous, meaning I thought I was rich at that time. And if I
Yeah.
were to go back, I would have maybe made some different choices, but I ended up going to a different business that wasn't a franchise, and learned a bunch through that for 10 years, and then after that bought a single unit franchise business that was 11 years old, and had plateaued. They were stuck. They were trying to get out, so I picked it up at a fire sale, which is a point I want to make real quick. If you're considering a side hustle, a franchise or non-franchise, there's a lot of businesses out there that you'd be surprised that are really struggling, maybe because there's absentee ownership, or perhaps they're not doing the right things, and you find through looking for businesses to buy online. So that's just kind of a little thing that I learned. I got this other business pennies on the dollar, and just applied everything that I learned over time, and in 4 years grew that thing by 60% when it was
Wow.
flatlined for previous 4 years. Just
Wow.
learning the things. But the one thing I want to just mention in all of this is that when we have that freedom, when we have the right mindset, John, that money flows to me easily. We don't have to wait so long. It can happen in the moment, because even in my young to mid 30s, and owning all these locations with 120 employees that were rotating all the time. They're teenage employees, and it's hard to keep employees. So it was a lot of work, but the right guy to run the business for me, and I was able to be with my family and my kids all the time as they were growing up. In fact, I was at my grandson's preschool graduation. I didn't know preschool graduation was a thing, but that was about 3 weeks ago, and a bunch of his siblings were there, my kids, and some of my grandkids. I've got 9 grandkids. But my son leaned over to me and he said, "Dad, you know what? It was so cool because I remember you being at my events, my games, and different things that I did. And here we are. Look at how, it's come full circle. And now you're actually at my son's graduation. And it's
Wow.
cool." And I said, "You know what? It is cool because that's what I set out to do." Now, it wasn't easy all the time. It was hard. I mean, it takes hard work and it takes working smart.
Yeah.
So
Todd, like, gosh, you've got me thinking about multiple different. You've already given like all these little pieces of uh, golden nuggets already that I mean I'm sitting here thinking about for our listeners. But what I want to maybe segue with is your comment about the time and freedom that this has produced for you. But there had to been a moment like when you said you packed up your family and moved them 850 miles. There's a lot of trust and faith that you put into the universe, right? Of like saying, "Hey, I'm
yes,
going to do this." What does that look like? Like for the people that are going like, "Oh, that's great," Todd, he had this vision, or he had he had some financial support backing. There still had to have been plenty of fear, doubt, worry that comes along with that. What kind of comments or suggestions would you have to people that says like that trade-off of pushing past to get you to be able to have those types of moments of freedom? What does that look like? What would you suggest to people?
well, great question. It was scary, I'll tell you that. We didn't know anybody, but we were going on a lot of trust in the universe, God, and was just and I wasn't afraid of hard work. I'd always been a hard worker, and the excitement of being able to build something, even though it was franchise, we still built it from ground up. We built the branding, but for me, I saw my father-in-law. I grew up with a dad that worked all the time,
Yeah.
and he was present as much as he could be, and was a wonderful father. My father-in-law, Dave, I saw he had a lot of spare time, and he was an attorney and owned businesses. So it wasn't always that way for him. He worked very hard and long hours in the beginning, but I saw that as a reward of some hard work. I knew it was going to be a grind. It was going to really, I'd have to really hustle, work hard, put in the hours. And my wife, Michelle, at the time, understood that because she was raised that way. But um, I think the point I want to make is that a lot of times we put these limitations on what we think we can do. Get into kind of a comfort zone, and we don't stretch ourselves. And really, that growth, both personally and mentally, and in all those ways, comes when we stretch ourselves. And so
Mm.
um, it was a great decision. Now, it is scary, but the payoff was just enormous.
Well, and you mentioned, before we got on, about a journey that you've been on over the last several years. You
Hmm.
mentioned your
Yeah,
wife Michelle. Would you be okay sharing that story about like the ultimate kind of freedom that you experienced with being able to spend some that
yeah.
last time with her?
I would be happy to, John. So about 4 years ago, my wife Michelle, at the time, we'd been married. We were married 34 years, 5 kids, bunch of grandkids, and she had some weird things going on with being dizzy, and she went in for an MRI, and they found a tumor in her brain, right back, really deep back here. And they said, it's so deep that it's going to be hard to biopsy. We think it's this kind of tumor, and these kind of tumors can sit there and not grow, not give any side effects or complications, and you may have it the rest of your life. We're going to just monitor you. And so we, over about a 2.5 year, 3 year period, uh, we went in for scans, and it didn't grow. But on October 25th of 2024, our life was completely turned upside down. She almost got in a car accident because she got lightheaded. Uh, our doctor said, hey, it can't be the tumor, just go to your primary care person. And we didn't trust that. So we went in MRI anyway, just a cash pay. Luckily, that's easy to get these days. And it turns out she had what's called hydrocephalus, which is built up fluid in the brain.
Mm.
We were told to take her to the emergency room right away. We did. And within 3 hours of being in the emergency room and some scans, they said that operation that we were trying to avoid because it's so deep and there could be a lot of complications, we need to do that surgery tomorrow at 10:30.
Mm.
So you can imagine how that would feel. It's like, gosh, married 34 years, it's been a great life, but this only happens to other people. She went in for the surgery and was never the same. And they said, this tumor you have is not curable, it's manageable. I'm like, well, what the heck does that mean? I focused on incurable. So we talked about, well, how long would that be? What's this going to look like? And they said, it'll take us, 12 months and going through rehab because she had a stroke during the surgery. We were devastated. My adult kids and I it was the most horrible thing that's ever happened, obviously. And that night before the surgery, I decided that I was going to drop everything else, which I was able to have the freedom because of what I had built over time and having that financial freedom and the time freedom, and spent every day with her and my kids, and what was going to be maybe 3 to 5 years to live, unfortunately turned out to be 8 months.
Mm.
But I was so grateful that I was able to be there and care for her and care for my kids. And as hard as that experience was, it was so rewarding as a husband and as a father to be able to do that. So you could call that the ultimate payoff. And because it was, and I was able to be there. I actually took 6 to 8 months off afterwards to just spend time with my kids and grandkids and help us all grieve properly. I took the time to grieve and to counseling weekly for 8 months, and I'm okay now.
Yeah.
I've since found love again, and am married to Cindy, and she, she is great. Everyone loves her in my family, and uh, but that time was a special time, as
Oh
hard as
gosh,
it was.
I thank you so much for being so vulnerable to share stories like that, because I think we go through life assuming like that everything just kind of falls into place, right? Like, well, if I just,
Yeah,
just pay my mortgage off, then, I'll get to this point, or, if I just work hard enough, I'll get that promotion, or whatever the carrot is that you may be moving after. But it's reality that life throws us curveballs, and when there's
mhm,
something that really jumps in front of us, I think that it's a moment to that hopefully is shared with someone out there listening today, that's, they're on the fence of saying like, hey, I want more for myself and my family, and that this may set them up, who knows when, hopefully never, but maybe there's
yeah,
some event, and maybe it's not tragic. It's just something where they have the ability to spend more time with the right person that
mhm.
makes a difference for someone else down the road. Where, like, so I think sharing your story, hopefully, lights a spark or
I
does
hope
something,
so.
gives someone some
Yeah,
inspiration or encouragement for someone.
yeah.
Um, Another thing you'd mentioned too, just a little bit ago, was that you looked at mentors. I've got a book that I followed and worked into my program, Be Free and Clear, but the book was Who Not How by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And I,
Mm,
I think of that often, like, we're always searching for how, but our brain doesn't necessarily know how to because it's never done it before. But there are people who have done it, like yourself. So how would someone who's like thinking like, hey, I've got a 9 to 5, I just can't do the 850-mile drop and pack up and leave, but maybe I want to buy a business or an existing franchise. Like, how do you recommend that people look for the right who in their life that can guide them in the along the path to maybe circumvent some of the shortcuts, like you do with your coaching? How do
Yeah.
people like what's that path look like for folks?
Great question. So, depending on I don't think there's an age limit to this, but when I was younger, my dad suggested to me, he said, if you're thinking about going into a certain career, find someone in that career and ask if you can take them to lunch and buy their lunch for them, even though they've got more money than you. You're just starting out, and the same goes, even at, 50, 60, 70, or whatever the age, it doesn't matter. But find someone, hope within your network, or get the word out to friends, family, and say, hey, I'm thinking about in careers maybe, and go talk to some people, and people love to talk about themselves. And I just got a new mentor 6 months ago, just an old friend from high school that is doing some things that I'm starting to do right now. And he said I had people just give me free advice, and so I kind of want to pay it back. So a lot of times people want to talk about that. As far as looking at a business to buy or get into, there are some low financial entry businesses that are owner operator, meaning there's got to be an owner or at least a manager strong enough running it, like um, carpet cleaning, and service based businesses that some of them you get in for like 50 grand. The way to do that, there's two ways. You can just Google online, businesses for sale. But for franchises, there are franchise business coaches, which are basically brokers. They help, someone like me, if I wanted to find the right business for me, pair me up with some businesses they might have or some franchises that they might know that are good. The only tip there I would give is that keep in mind, they are salespeople and they get paid when you buy a business.
Right.
So just go in clear on that, because you can get caught up in the emotion of it. But that's what I'd recommend for that. But talk to people, and I see a lot of friends. Just lastly, losing jobs at an age they should be close to retiring, and the workforce is kind of crazy right now. So it's really good to have a plan B. I've got a friend, Brant, that is a software developer and in senior management, never had a hard time finding a job. Once AI started coming out, it was, he lost a job on it. And he had a hard time finding one. He started a corn dog truck, a food truck.
Wow.
And got into it, for not too much money. And he didn't know anything about it. And I gave him some free coaching and advice. But there's a lot of possibilities out there. One warning I will give about buying a business or a franchise: keep in mind that sometimes it's not as easy as it's portrayed to be. It's, if you get into a business and you're going to keep your full-time job and just hope that it's going to be kind of this ATM creating money, I will tell you, be very careful, because generally it takes more work than you think. But it's doable,
And that's where some of your coaching and consulting actually comes from, right? Because people will buy a
Yes.
franchise, with the belief or hope that there's
Mm-hmm.
a model set in place versus just starting something from scratch. But then they still find that there's gaps or there's missing
Mm-hmm.
information or skill sets that need to
Mm-hmm.
be matched. And that's what you like what you've done with
That's what I do.
your
Yeah.
coaching consulting. Yeah. Yeah. Are there
Yeah.
any
I just,
but Is there anything like that you would recommend from seeing that? Like, what would be maybe one of the top things that you see where people are deficient in? Like, oh man, I wish I'd have known or asked this question or talked to somebody like Todd to know like to fill in that blank right up front.
Well, there's a lot of things. It's hard to maybe narrow it down to one thing, but it's I help people also know if a franchise is right for them. I'm not a broker by any means. I don't do that. I help people that are deciding to get into franchising or someone that's already in it. And I've had people come to me over the years saying, "Hey, I heard about this great business and I think I should do it." And I help them know the right questions to ask. And a lot of times it wasn't a good fit, and I would just be honest with them and say, well, you need to consider that if you manage running the place and you're not there to fix problems, you lose that manager. And if you don't develop what I call a bench of other employees that you're grooming to become a replacement for that manager, then
Yep.
you're going to end up having to step in. So you have the right team in place. If you're going to do this, here's the number one: invest in the best employees, get the best
Yeah.
of the best, and people that you can trust and rely on. And that's what I learned a couple of years in my first franchise 25 30 years ago. Was I had Marcus, and Marcus and I are friends to this day, but he started as a manager of one location, and then I developed him into actually running the company for me to where I didn't have to be there.
Wow.
But building the right team and knowing if the franchise is the right fit for you is something that you could see yourself doing yourself if you had to step in, and could you be excited about it?
Yeah.
Because you have to be passionate if you're going to do your own thing, your own side
Yeah.
hustle. You got to
Yeah.
have passion and
I was going to say I think it's funny that that comes back into like our Be Free and Clear program. Like, I talk about, hearing your calling, but then to dig a little deeper and ask yourself, like, why is that calling there? Because you start to get to the core elements of like what you experience out of that. Do you feel a deeper connection to community, or you feel like brings, that joy and happiness? So I totally agree with that too. It's like doing some
yeah,
self-exploration, right? Before even dig into the business. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like if you don't like teenagers and you hire a business that is generally teenagers that are attracted to that pay and that job,
yeah,
and rethink it, you know.
yeah,
And there's some
right.
franchise businesses that only require one or two employees, so just got to get out there and look. And you know, I usually do free consults, and just if I have any help, I that's what I've learned is I've always had mentors to help me, and I basically become the coach and mentor I had back in those days, when I was 29.
Oh,
So
that's fantastic. Was as you say that, I'm going to put your website up, and this is a new website, correct? So that hopefully by the time this
yeah,
airs,
it'll
it's
be
out
up.
there and everything. So,
Yeah,
but
it'll be up
yeah,
tomorrow. So yeah,
yeah, it's perfect. So if anybody that's listening to the podcast and can't see it off the YouTube channel, it's www. Todd Woods, and that's with an S plural. So toddwoodscoach.com.
yeah.
Is that
Happy to talk to anybody. That's perfect. No, absolutely perfect. I'm not going to pitch anything other than that. I just hope that you know there was one little nugget or two that your listeners and viewers were able to get from this conversation. Um, Believe in yourself. You believe that you can stretch yourself, and I'm not talking about stretch being frazzled, but really put some thought into it, make a plan, and go for it.
yeah?
Go for it.
So true. Hey Todd, as we go to wrap things up today, I'm starting this new closing question for all my guests. So when we talk about being free and clear, there can be everybody has a little different definition. What's your definition of Todd Woods being free and clear?
You didn't even tell me you're going to ask me that question, but it's simple. It's easy for me. Being free and clear is, to me, having the financial resources and the time to spend with the people you love doing the things that you love to do without
Oh,
having a cell phone ring off the hook in your pocket. To me,
oh, that's
that's being free
beautiful.
and clear.
I love that.
That,
That's
yeah.
a great one. I love it. Yeah.
All right. Does
Well,
that put me in like the top 10 or something? Or
absolutely, absolutely. Well, hey, actually the first time I've asked the question, I thought it was a great one to end on. So yeah, you're number one.
I want to add one thing to that. It's because for me, it's relationships with loved ones and friends, because that's at the end of the day, after the grind and during the grind, that's who gets us through the challenging times.
Yeah.
And during that time when our family was devastated, going through such a hard time, the amount of friends and family that showed up for us
Mm,
is the only thing that carried us through.
yep.
God and the people that you know we'd given to over time, and my wife Michelle gave a lot to. She had spent a life of service.
Yeah,
So
I couldn't agree with
anyway,
yep, couldn't agree
yeah.
more. So, Todd, thank you
Well, this has
so
been fun,
much
John. It's
yeah, I
awesome.
appreciate you so much. I can't wait to spend more time with you
Yeah,
and the things that we've both got
yeah,
the horizon for the future.
yeah,
I'm hoping we can help change some lives. So, thank you again for
yeah.
being
Me
here.
too. Thanks,
All
John.
right, take care. Thank you.